manage comments.
All right, 5 minutes till curtain.
Thank you.
Thank you,
5 minutes.
Welcome to our weekly installment of ZooMatinee. We are so thrilled that you're joining us today. I'm Angela Daniels, and I'm your host this week. Don't worry, Mitchell Hurricane Smith hasn't gone anywhere, but we are lucky enough to have him as one of our actors this week. So, ZooMatinee is created through the cooperation of 171 Cedar Arts and Elmira Little Theater. 171 Cedar Arts has their annual Kaleidoscope Fundraiser coming up this weekend on June 6th. Tickets and details are available now on our website, 171 Cedar Arts. We hope you'll wander on over there after our broadcast today and take a look at the different ways that you can support 171. This afternoon, we are really excited to present a double feature. We are doing two shows by author Horace Holley. Our first show is The Genius, directed by Melissa Norton and starring Zach Swasta and our very own Mitchell Hurricane Smith. And we'll go ahead and begin with that.
I wonder if you've seen my dog. I was going for a walk, but Rex seems to have grown tired of waiting.
Your dog? No, sir. I haven't seen him. Shall I go look?
No, never mind. He'll come back. Rex and I understand each other. Well, he has his little moods like me.
So if you were going for a walk, then...
Doesn't matter at all. I can go at any time. You don't live in this country.
No, sir. I live in New York, but I wish I did. It's beautiful out here, isn't it?
Oh, it's very beautiful to me. Well, I love it. You may have come a long road this morning. Let's sit down.
Oh, thank you. I'm not interrupting anything, am I?
Oh, bless your heart. No, indeed. What is there to interfere with? All we have is life, and this is part of it.
I like to sit under these trees. It makes me think of the Old Testament.
Well, that's interesting. How?
Well, maybe I'm wrong, but whenever I think of the Old Testament, I see an old man under a tree.
Yes.
And he's a man who has lived through it all, you know, and he found something real about it. And he sits there, calm and strong, something like a tree himself. And every once in a while, somebody comes along, a boy, you know, and the boy talks to him all about himself, just as we imagined we would with our fathers if they weren't so busy, or our teachers if they didn't depend so much on books, or our ministers if we thought they would really understand. And the old man doesn't say much, maybe, but the boy goes away much stronger and happier.
Yes, I understand. Well, the Old Testament. They did get hold of things, didn't they?
What I can't understand, though, is how nowadays people seem more grown up and competent than those men were. And we do such wonderful things. Skyscrapers and aeroplanes. And yet we aren't half so wonderful as they were in the Old Testament, with their jugs and their wooden plows. I mean, we aren't nearly so big as the things we do, while those old fellows were so much bigger. We smile at them, but what if someday one of our machines fell over on us? Then what would we do?
Oh, I wonder.
You know, I went through a big factory just last week. One of my friend's father is the manager. And all I could think of was what a fella could do who didn't like it, who didn't fit in. Nowadays, most everybody seems competent about factories or businesses or something like that, you know, and they've got a hold of everything. So a fella's got to do the same thing, or where is he?
Oh, well, that's the first question, certainly. Oh, where is he? But where is he if he does do the same thing?
Why? He's with the rest. And they don't ask that question.
Oh, I'm afraid they don't. Oh, it would be interesting to be there if they should begin to ask it, wouldn't it?
Yes. I like to be there when someone I know asks themselves, but they never will. Why should they?
Oh, don't you mean, how could they?
Yes, of course. They don't ask the question because the big thing they're doing seems to be the answer beforehand. But it isn't. Not compared with the Old Testament. So we have to ask it for ourselves. And that's why I came here.
Oh, you want to know where they are with their power and where you will be without it.
Where I'll be. I hate it. But what else is there today?
Why, there's you.
But that's just it. What am I for if I can't join in? I came to you and you don't mind my talking, do you?
Oh, on the contrary.
Well, everybody I know is a part of it. So how could they tell me what to do outside of it then? I've been wondering about that for a year. Before then, when I was just a boy, the world seemed full of everything. But now it seems to have only one thing. That or nothing. Then one day I saw a photograph somebody had cut out of a Sunday paper. And I thought to myself, there's a man who seems outside, entirely outside. And yet he has something. It wasn't all or nothing for him. And I wondered who it was. Then I found your book with the same picture in it. You bet I read it right off. It was the first time in my life I had ever felt power as great as skyscrapers and railroads, and yet apart from them. Outside of all they mean. Like the Old Testament, those poems.
Oh, you like them.
It was more than that. How can a fellow like the ocean or a snowstorm?
Oh, is that what you thought they were like?
Why, they went off like a 14-inch gun. Not a whine about life in them. Not a single regret or anything. They were wonderful. They seemed to pick up mountains and cities and toss them about like toys. They made me feel that what I was looking for was able to conquer what I didn't like. I said to myself, I don't care if he does laugh at me. I'll go and ask him where all that power is. And so I came.
Oh, there's Rex now. Over across the road? Well, he's wondering who you are. Oh, he sees we're friends. Oh, and now he's pretending to be jealous. Dogs are funny, aren't they? But you were speaking about my poems. Well, it's odd that first criticism should come from you like this. Well, you must be about the same age I was when I began writing, or when I wanted above anything to write a book like that, and with such a book seemed the most impossible thing I could do, like swimming the Atlantic or living forever.
It seemed impossible to you? I mean, I should think it would be the most natural thing in the world for you, like eating dinner.
Oh, that's the wonderful thing. I mean, not the book, but that I should come to write it.
But who else could write it?
Oh, at your age, I thought anybody could. Anybody and everybody except myself.
Really?
Really and truly. You have no idea what a useless misfit I was.
But I read somewhere that you had always been brilliant, even as a boy.
Unfortunately, yes. That's what made it so hard for me. Shall I tell you about it?
Oh, I wish you would.
Brilliance. I'll tell you what that was, at least for me. Well, I wrote several things that people called brilliant. One in particular, a little play of decadent epigram. Well, it was acted by amateurs before an admiring select audience. That was when I was 21. Well, from about 16 on, I've been acutely miserable. Physically miserable. I never knew when I wouldn't actually cave in. I felt like a bankrupt living on borrowed money. Of course, it's plain enough now. The revolt of starved nerves. Well, I cared only for my mind, grew only in that, and the rest of me withered up like a stalk in dry soil. So the flower drooped too, in decadent epigram. But nobody pointed out the truth of it all to me, and I scorned to give my body a thought. People predicted a brilliant future for me. I'm crying inside. Then I married. Well, I married the girl who had taken the star part in the play. According to the logic of the situation, it was inevitable. Everybody remarked how inevitable it was. A decorative girl, you know. She wanted to be the wife of a great man. Well, we didn't get along. There was an honest streak in me somewhere which hated deception. Well, I couldn't play the part, a brilliant young poet, with any success. She was at me all the while to write more of the same thing, and I didn't want to. The difference between the great man I was supposed to be and the sick child I really was, it began to torture. I knew I oughtn't go any further if I wanted to do anything real. Well, then one night we had an artistic dinner. My wife had gotten hold of a famous English poet, and through him a publisher. Well, the publisher was her real game. Well, I drank champagne before dinner so as to be brilliant, and I was. And before I realized it, Nora had secured a promise from the publisher to bring out a book of plays. Well, I remember she said it was particularly finished, but it wasn't. Only the one, and I hated that. But I sat down consciously to write the book that she, and apparently all the world that mattered, expected me to write. Well, I couldn't write it. Not a blessed word. Something inside me refused to work, and there I was. In a month or so, she began to ask about it. Nora thought I ought to turn them out while she waited. Well, I walked up and down the park one afternoon wondering what to tell her. And when I realized that either she was never going to understand or would despise me, I grew desperate. I wrote her a note full of fine phrases about incompatibility, her unapproachable ideas, and the soul's need for freedom, or things she would understand and wear a heroic attitude about. And I fled. I came here.
Well, of course. But didn't she follow you? Didn't they bother you?
Not a bit. Well, Nora preferred her lonely heroism. Well, in a few months, I was quite forgotten. That was one of the healthful things I learned. Well, I was a wreck when I came here. I wanted only to lie down under a tree, and there it was, under that tree yonder, as my salvation came.
Your salvation?
Hunger. Well, that was my salvation. A simple, elemental, unescapable appetite. You see, I had no servant, no one at all, so I had to get up and work to prepare my food. Oh, it was very strange. Compared with this life, my life beforehand had been like living in a locked box. Someone to do everything for me except think, and, well, consequently, I thought too much. But here, the very fact of life was brought home to me. Well, I spent weeks working about the house and grounds on the common necessities. By the time winter came on, this place was fit to live in, and I was enjoying life. All the brilliance had faded away. I was as simple as a blade of grass. For a year, I didn't write a word. I had the courage to wait for the real thing. Nobody pestering me to be a genius. Someday, you may read that first book. People said I had rediscovered humanity, and I had.
Well, I will read it. And how much more it will mean to me now.
I suppose you know the theory of vibrations. How a little push is given a bridge and repeated often enough at the right intervals, the bridge will fall?
Yes.
Well, that's the whole secret of what I've been looking for, what you found in my poems.
I don't understand.
Oh, a man's life is a rhythm. Eating, sleeping, working, playing, loving, thinking, everything. Oh, and when we live so that each activity comes at the right interval, we gain power. When one interrupts the other, we lose. Weakness is merely the thrust of one impulse against another instead of their combined thrust against the world. When I came here, feeling like a criminal, I was obeying the one right instinct in a welter of emotions. It was like the faintest of heartbeats in a sick body. I listened to that. And then I learned physical hunger, and then sleep, and so on. Well, it's incredible how stupid I was about the elemental art of living. I had to begin all over from the beginning, as if no one had ever lived before.
Oh, that's what you meant in your poems about religion.
Exactly! Well, I learned that good is the rhythm of a man's personal nature, and that evil is merely the confusion of the same impulses. As time went on, I began to instinctively live for and by the rhythm. Everything about my life was caught up and used in the vision of power. Drawing water, cutting wood, digging in the garden. Dawn. Oh, it was all marvelous. I couldn't help writing those poems. Well, they are the natural joys and sorrows of 10 years. Well, as a matter of fact, though, I grew to care less and less about writing as living became fuller and richer. Oh, people write too much. They would write less if they had to make the fire in the morning.
The first impulse. I see. Oh, life might be so simple.
Why not? The animals have it. Men have it at times, but we make each other forget. If we could only be each other's reminders instead of forgetters.
Yes, but I see the only thing to do is to go away, like you.
Oh, no, not necessarily. I was merely a bad case and required a desperate remedy. Earth and air and freedom from others' will. I need the country, but the next man might require the city as passionately. Don't imagine that only the hermits like me live instinctively. Well, it can be done in New York City too. Only one mustn't be so sensitive to others. After all, my friend, we were wrong in saying that this power lies outside the world of skyscrapers and business. Well, it doesn't lie outside nor inside. Well, it cuts across everything. Do you see? For it's all a matter of a man's own soul.
Then,
We can't live in a vacuum. The more you feel the force, the more you must act. The more you can act. And in the long run, it doesn't matter what you do if you do what your own instinct bids.
then I could stay right in the midst of it?
Yes, and if you're thinking of writing poetry, well, it might be better to stay in the midst of it. Drama, you know. It's time for a new drama.
But see, it isn't that with me. I can't write. I had one splendid teacher, and he used to talk about these things right in class. He said that the most educated people think that intellect is a matter of making fine distinctions, of seeing as two separate points what the unintelligent would believe was one point. But this idea was finicky. He wanted us to see that intelligence might also be a matter of seeing the connection between two things so far apart that most people would think they were always separate. I like that. It made education mean something because it made it depend on imagination instead of grubbing. And then he told us about the history of our subject, grammar, and how it began as poetry when every word was an original creation. And then it became philosophy as people had to arrange speech with thought, and then science with more or less exact laws. I could see it. The thing became alive. And he said, with all knowledge passed through the same stages, there isn't anything that can't eventually be made scientific. That made me think a good deal. I wondered if somebody couldn't work out a way of preventing anybody from being poor. It seems so unnecessary with so much work being done. That's what I want to do. Thanks to you.
Oh, here's Rex. Rex, no, my good friend. Rex always cares for the people I do. Don't you, Rex?
Of course. I see one thing now. It's the people nearest one that make the most difference. Mother, now, she will understand. You don't believe in marrying, though, do you?
Oh, I certainly do.
Oh, but I thought that you...
Because I left one woman and hadn't found another, that I didn't care for women? Others believe that too, but it isn't so. On the contrary, you see, I didn't so much leave her as get away from my own failure. Of course, there is such a thing as the wrong woman. She makes a man a fraction. The better she is in herself, the less she leaves him to live by. 1/20th is less than 1/2, but the right woman, she multiplies a man.
Oh.
Well, you might have told from the poems how I believe in love.
I don't remember any love poems.
Bless your heart. Every one of them was a love poem. Not the old-fashioned kind about fading roses or tender hearts. I sent that book out as a cry for a mate. It is charged with the fullness of love. Oh, that's why I could write about trees and storms.
Well, I suppose if I had been older...
It isn't about one's age, but one's needs. Well, she'll understand. Look, the sun has gone round the corner of the house. Is that a lunch in your parcel?
Yes, it is.
Would you like to make a picnic? I'll get something from the house, and then we can go for a walk in the woods.
Oh, I'd love to.
All right. I'll be ready in no time. Come on, Rex.
That was great, guys. We are so thrilled to have both of you today. So we mentioned before that 171 has our big fundraiser this weekend. It is on the 6th of June, and there's lots of ways you can participate. We have an auction that's open to anybody that will start at 8 p.m. and you can just log on to our website to see a live show that will be hosted by Mitchell and I together, and anybody can bid in the auction. If you'd like to participate in another way, we have some cocktail parties, and they're Zoom cocktail parties, so you can buy a ticket to one of those. They're watch parties. They're all themed. We have there's a 50s theme, there's an 80s theme, there's a 60s theme, and there's a 20s theme, which I think you can interpret however you want. The 1920s, the 2020s, however you want to do it. And they are going to be a lot of fun. We've already got lots of people signing up for those, and they're going to be a lot of fun. So we hope you'll join us. Go to 171's website, sign up. There's lots of ways you can help us out. 171 is completely donation funded, so we hope that you'll join us. This is our big fundraiser for the year. The next show that we have today is also by Horace Holley. It's called The Genius. It's directed by Melissa Nord. I'm sorry, this one is directed by Zach Swasta. The last one was directed by Melissa Norton. This one is starring Melissa Norton and is directed by Zach Swasta and is also featuring our very own Mitchell Hurricane Smith again. So enjoy.
But Jean, where are you going when you packed up here?
I'm not leaving here. I'm staying on.
Oh. But I thought, now, you were talking about being free for your own work at last.
If I have any work to do, I can do it here. You don't understand quite. All these years, I have been living from whirlpool to whirlpool, never settled, always déraciné. The thought of getting accustomed to another place, oh, it makes me shudder.
I can imagine now, Jean, how it's been for you, Jean. But can you find any peace here? Well, with all these things about, you're so sensitive. Lamps and pictures and rugs. Well, these aren't just furniture to you. Well, they're memories. They're images of the past. Won't they be too real, too personal? Won't you feel more at liberty with yourself if you create your own atmosphere?
Ah, they are real enough. That table is a winter in Munich. The samovar is Warsaw, one night in May. The Lucerna is Rome. And all that those places mean to me. I never realized how things could be so alive, be personal.
There.
I was left alone in the midst of these.
Yeah, don't you see? They're so dominating. Well, I knew you before all this. I wish you would get away. Be yourself.
No, I shall stay here, as close as possible.
But really, Jean, I'm thinking of your work. Perhaps you don't appreciate what an insidious drug memory can be. Well, especially the memory of unhappiness. And let's be frank, Jean, for the sake of your future, you have been unhappy.
Unhappy? Yes. I have been outrageously unhappy. Years of it. Sharp arrows and poisoned wine. Oh, I wanted to die.
Jean?
You read a play by Strindberg, and you say it's very strong, very artistic. But all the while, you believe it is only the nightmare of a diseased mind. It's just a play. You shut the book and return to real life, thankfully. Well, the Strindberg play has been my real life, and my real life, my play, my impossible dream. You can't imagine how terrifying it is to feel the situation develop around you. Two bodies caught naked in an endless wilderness of thorns. Every movement one makes to free the other only wounds him the more. Two souls, each innocent and aspiring, bound together by serpents, like the Laocoon. It is one of those things that are absolutely impossible and yet true.
I'll help you pack. And now you must.
We have the deepest respect and admiration for one another. But somehow, we never walked in step. His emotion repressed mine. My emotion repressed his. Sometimes one was the slave, and sometimes the other. We couldn't both be free at the same time. There was always something to hide, to be afraid of. Not words nor acts, but moods. It passed over from one soul to the other like invisible rays. And we couldn't separate. That was part of it. We just went on and on and on.
People wondered. I mean, the first time I met Paul.
What do you feel?
I wondered afterward what it really was. Well, he seemed to impress me like a powerful motor car stalled on a muddy road.
I know.
Poor child.
No, you don't understand. I was unhappy. In the ordinary sense, unbelievably so. But that wasn't all. I was alive. I lived as the man who lives, who faints in the dark mind underground. And I lived as the aviator lives thrilling against the sun. And as the believer in a world of infidels, that was what he did for me. And slowly, as I learned how deeply the very pain was making me live, I put my unhappiness by. It was there, but no longer seemed important. It was the lingering complaint of my old commonplace soul, standing fearfully on the brink of greater things and hating the situation that led it there.
You're a big woman, Jean.
No, I am a small woman in front of a big thing. One of the biggest. Genius. And the force of it, relentless as nature, made me what I am. Oh, Vern, when I think of his music, tempestuous as the sea, healing as spring. Now where is it? He had what all the world wants most, flight, and the world stalled him in its own mud. You saw it. That's why I shall stay here. It's the only place with his atmosphere. All these things are he. And I face them here in silence, and I bare my breast to the arrow. Here I am, the only one who knows Paul's music and its possibility. To the rest, It's just a heap of stones by the roadside. The architect is dead.
But didn't he... why didn't he succeed?
You ask it, of course. You have the right. Sometimes I ask it too. Why Paul never succeeded. While we were struggling along, the things that held him back seemed only details. Only now do I see them as a whole. Well, in the first place, Paul never aimed directly at success. He was all round. If it had been merely a question of exploiting his talents, sticking to the one idea day in, day out, never letting an opportunity slip by of meeting the right people and getting to the right places, that would have been easy. Oh, he had tremendous energy. I used to grudge his interest in other things. I hated to see him lose the chances and let them be snapped up by littler men. He seemed to waste himself right and left prodigally. But it wasn't that. It wasn't waste. It was all as much a part of him as his music. He detested the stupidity of wealth and poverty. He rebelled against the laws that aren't laws, but only the interests enforced by authority. He fought against the sheer deadness of prejudice. Oh, how he hated all of that. And why not? You see, Vern, he was sensitive to it, not only as a thinker, but as a musician too. It was all a part of the discord. And what I used to think his wasting himself was really an effort to create a larger harmony. He used to say that the beauty of music is only the image of beauty in life, and that life must come first. He couldn't endure discords anywhere. Paul despised the musicians who scream at a flatted F, yet hunger for the flesh pots after the performance. No, he was never that. People resented it. The very people who ought to have understood.
But he didn't neglect his music. I mean, that is, he seemed to...
He made enormous efforts to get his violin before the public. And several times he was discovered by men who could have made him famous overnight. We all believe that genius will out, despite anything, but it doesn't always. Musicians respected him, but they were afraid of him too. He criticized them for their shortcomings in other things, just as he criticized others for their shortcomings in art. He wouldn't accept any talent, no matter how fine, if it went with anything small or destructive. You can imagine the china shops he left in fragments. Just think. Once in Berlin, it was all arranged for him to have a recital. He was working furiously on his program, and I was dancing on air when, just at the last moment, he heard the director make some light remark or other about women. Paul was raging. He threw the words back in the fellow's teeth and made him apologize. But there we were. They called off the recital, naturally. And I couldn't blame Paul. I was just beginning to understand. Another time. No, he never had luck. Paul had bad luck. I often think of the Greek tragedies.
Another time?
Another time. It was in Warsaw. We had gotten with a letter of introduction to Sparovich.
The Sparovich?
Yes. It was a chance in 10,000. We pawned stuff to get there. Well, Paul played like a god. Sparovich was quite overcome. He swore he would compose something especially for Paul. We had visions of playing before the president.
But what happened?
What happened? One night, a woman called on Paul at the hotel. He went down, not knowing who it was or anything about her. He said afterward that she started in flattering him and asking him to play for her sometime. Then Sparovich rushed in, seizing the woman and cursing Paul with mouthfuls of Slavic hate. Oh, so that dream ended.
But why? Was it Sparovich's wife?
No, worse luck. It was his mistress. Oh, you can't imagine the reaction from such disappointments. The long, slow warming to the full possibility of the occasion until the artist's mind and body are one leaping flame, and then the sudden fall into icy water. It takes months to work up to that same pitch again. And then Rome.
What, again?
Oh yes, again. This time, for a wonder, everything went smoothly. I had watched over him like a cat to save him from others' stupidity and his own impetuousness. It came the very moment when he had to go to the theater. He asked me if I were ready, and I wasn't. I didn't want to go.
You didn't want to go?
No, it's difficult to explain, but somehow by then I had grown aware that the long series of little obstacles, each one accidental and temporary, seemed to express something unseen, something impersonal, a kind of fate. As if the verdict had gone out from the lords of all things that Paul was not to succeed. And everything seemed to hang in the balance that night. I thought that the fact I was aware of Paul's bad luck made me all the likelier the instrument for it to work through. So I told him I had a headache. He must have felt something in my voice. He dropped his violin and demanded I tell him why I didn't want to go. His intuition told him it was a matter of will with me. I hadn't thought to have a story ready. Besides, I was so worn out that I was on the verge of hysteria. Oh, he stormed, and I sat staring at him without a word, wondering only why he didn't forget poor insignificant me and go forth to his glory. I despised him for considering me at such a moment. I didn't understand. My opinion, my feeling was more important to Paul than the rest of the world. So, after all, I was the instrument.
But why didn't you just get up and go?
As soon as I saw how much it meant to Paul, I tried to. But it was too late. We sat there arguing until 3 a.m, an orgy of tears and self-immolation for us both. I suppose he might have explained to the director afterward and arranged another concert, but those things were never the same the second time. Well, I forced myself to get rid of that feeling about his bad luck. How I ever succeeded, I don't know. Paul caught my mood and began to believe it himself. But somehow I did. And then I made him give up his violin and start composing. Of course, we had to have money for that. I wrote a relative and demanded point blank, shamelessly, $2,000. I felt it was my restitution to Paul. I received the money. What the relative thought, I don't know. I supposed he paid it to avoid getting another letter from me. I don't blame him. So we came over here, and Paul started at work. I was fighting for him and with him every moment. Oh, how he worked! 6 months like a coal heaver. Then he finished and played it over, and he tore it all up. Every note.
Why?
He said it was written in an old-fashioned style. It was curious. In his playing, he appreciated the most advanced technique. But when he came to compose, he found himself imitating the things he had admired when he was 18. It had to be worked out of his mind. Well, he did it all through again. And this time, he said he was only about 2 years behind. He tore it all up again. But now he was convinced he could succeed. He was magnificent. I would have shared him with the world gladly, but I knew it was best for him to do this work. The hours this room has seen. Well, he made a few notes. He stopped a few days to take a breath, and then caught the cold that wore him out. Over there, in that drawer, are the notes. A few scraps of paper. The rest of it, the experience of a strong life, a visioning life, are with a mind that is dumb. Sometimes, when I sit here, I hear it all played. An orchestra. New harmonies. Pure emotion. The wonder and then the pain of it are almost unbearable.
Oh, Jean, I begin to understand.
Over in London, there are half a dozen men and women who caught a glimpse of Paul as he really was. In Munich, there are half a dozen more. He was at his best in a studio among friends with a congenial atmosphere. They knew. But what is that? I tell you, Vern, the only way I can explain it all is by seeing two forces, two moralities, the morality of God and the morality of nature. Perhaps in some people they both work together for the same end, but they don't always. In the sight of heaven, Paul was an apostle of harmony. But in the sight of nature, he was a seed one too many for the tree, the bird wrongly colored in the forest. I sit among these things, the fast ebbing beats of his memory, thinking of what he might have been for others as he was for me. My heart breaks. Our unhappiness? Cloud passing before the sun, nothing more. And during this past year, I've come to love him all over again. Not as mate, but as mother.
Ah, Jean, with all his bad luck, he had you. Well, who knows what would have happened to him if you hadn't been there?
He had me? No, he never had me. He made me. And that's why I sit all alone with the things that are Paul. Paul, the flame that was never lit on the altar. The sword that was never drawn from the scabbard. We talk together, Vern, Paul and I. We talk together, and I wait for him to tell me what to do.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much for joining us again this week. Let's bring in our actors. First, let's bring back our very own Mitchell Hurricane Smith.
Hi,
Yay! Hi, Mitchell. And Melissa Norton. And Zach Swasta. Thank you guys for joining us today. And we've had some lovely comments. FLX Gives Live. They would write less if they had to make fire in the morning. And Hair House joined us again for, I think Texas is where he joins us from. He says, bless your heart. Beth Landon says, bravo. Gigi Alvarez says, wonderful piece of philosophical reflection. So perfect at this crazy time. Thank you. You're welcome. And we hope so. We feel the same way. We know everything is kind of terrible. And we hope that we hope that you get a minute. We went in today and I kind of, I hope that you get an hour to take a break from the terrible that's everything else. We have Marcel waves and face masks. That's right.
The 2020s.
That's right. That's right. For the 2020s. That's right. Thank you. And Hair House, that actually would be great. Oh, somebody please do that for the 20s party. And Hair House is Bravo also. And again, 171 this weekend. This is our big fundraiser for the year, and we are offering classes online. We are doing everything we can to keep art in our lives right now, and art is so important in our society, and art is what brings change. So we hope that you will join us this weekend. Find a way to join us. Our website is 171cedararts.org. Thank you very much. You can find lots of ways to participate at any level. We hope you'll join us, and we'll see you again next week. We have kind of an interview show next week where we will talk some more about Shakespeare. You know how we all feel about Shakespeare around here. So join us, and we will have some more fun things to do. If you are an actor or a director and you would like to participate in ZooMatinee, please reach out to us at elmiralittletheater@gmail.com, and we will help you produce something. We would love to have you join us here. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, and have a great day.
Bye all.
Bye.
See ya.